Yali Madad, and welcome to Sundays with Us. My name is Zara Lalani. It's hard to imagine we're in October already, and it's even harder to believe that we're just 30 days away from the 2020 elections. Today, we'll kick off a two-part series of Mobilizing the American Ismaili Vote. Today's segment will cover a quick history lesson on voting and how to register to vote. Our second session on October 18th will showcase some awesome Jamaati members that are doing some great work in the civic engagement space. Before we get started, a few words from U.S. National Council President Al-Karim Alidina.
My brothers and sisters, Yali Madad, I hope all continues to be well with you. Last week, we celebrated National Voter Registration Day, and today I would like to spend some time briefly reflecting on the importance of civic engagement in our community. In a speech to the Governor General of Canada's Leadership Conference in 2004, Maulana Hazrat Imam said, quote, "Democracies must be educated if they are to express themselves competently, and their electorates are to reach informed opinions about the great issues at stake." Perhaps the greatest obstacle to pluralism and democracy, however, is the lacuna in the general education of the populations involved. Unquote. As murids of the Imam and citizens of a vibrant democracy, it is our duty and privilege to be civically engaged, well-informed members of our community. Last month, I mentioned that voting is the foundation of being civically engaged and working to create a pluralistic society. It remains the most powerful tool in our belt to ensure our voices are heard and that we are represented. That most fundamental idea cannot be met merely with our support. It must be matched by our actions. That's why today I am proud to inform the Jamaat about the National Council's Voter Registration and Civic Engagement Campaign, an initiative to ensure that every Jamaati member who is able to registers to vote, and that our Jamaat becomes well informed and civically engaged by participating in the elections this November. Over the coming days and weeks, please look out for programs on how to become civically engaged and discuss the core issues in this election. Visit the Ismaili USA's voting site to learn more about your state's voting guidelines and find information to register to vote and request a mail-in ballot. For Jamaati members who may have questions about voting, need help with the process of registering, or requesting a mail-in ballot, please call our National Voter Registration Assistance Hotline at 202-854-8683 or visit the.ismaili/USA/vote. Given the pandemic and current public health crisis, we encourage Jamaati members to utilize absentee voting, drive-through voting, and ballot drop boxes if they feel they cannot safely vote in person. On a separate topic, I would also like to take this opportunity to inform you about a mid-year survey that the National Council is launching this week. As you may be aware, on a periodic basis, the Jamaati institutions provide Maulana Hazrat Imam with reports on the progress the USA Jamaat is making towards improving our overall quality of life. To ensure that our reporting is as accurate and as complete as possible, we are launching this midterm survey to collect the necessary information directly from the Jamaat. The survey is anonymous and does not require any personally identifying information. Just one person in each family needs to fill it out on behalf of the entire family. The survey should take under 10 minutes and can be completed from your mobile device. More information, including a link to the online survey, is available on the Ismaili Insight. If you prefer completing a paper survey, you can request it in English or Farsi by calling Access at 1-844-552-2237. Submitting a paper version of the survey is still completely confidential. I urge each family in the Jamaat to participate in this survey. We need your participation in this exercise to ensure the information we collect is accurate and complete and can continue to report accurately and plan for the Jamaat accordingly. Finally, Shukr, this past week we have been able to open a few additional Jamaat Khanas in the USA. Please note that we continue to monitor the status of the pandemic on a daily basis and inshallah hope to be able to continue reopening Jamaat Khanas as it is safely possible to do so. Until next time, I wish you continued safety and good health and urge you all to keep your guard up and continue taking precautions as we all work towards minimizing the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Ya Ali Madat.
President Al-Karim's speeches always give me something to think about. All right, let's get started. For those of you that don't know, I'm an educator. As a teacher, I try to inspire every mind that I interact with in creative ways. I'm a firm believer in learning and growing every day, which is why I want to take you through a quick lesson on the history of voting in the United States. Before we set out to vote on November 3rd, it is important to understand how citizens received the right to vote. Here is a short video created by the folks at Pursuit of History, a nonprofit organization striving to educate adults about history that will cover how voting rights in the US evolved over time, voting rights amendment, and barriers to voting. Check it out.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Pursuit of History. On this episode, we'll be discussing the history of voting rights. Casting a vote for local, state, and federal officials is an important civic responsibility in America. It's an opportunity to have your voice be heard and to engage with members of your community in the democratic process. For American citizens, the chance to vote begins at 18, but that wasn't always the case. In the early years of America, only a small percentage of people were allowed to vote. Nope. No, keep going. Keep going. Almost there. Okay, stop. At the founding of America, only adult, white, landowning men were allowed to vote. Not surprisingly, the people making the decisions in the early days of America were, you guessed it, white male landowners. While they wanted to ensure that the power of government came from the people, they struggled with determining exactly who qualified as the people. As James Madison said, allow the right to vote exclusively to property owners, and the rights of persons may be oppressed. Extend it equally to all, and the rights of property owners may be overruled by a majority without property. It was quite the early conundrum. They ultimately decided to leave the decision up to individual states. Some states dropped the property requirement over time, but the pool of voters was still limited to adult white men until 1870 with the passing of the 15th Amendment. 5 years after the Civil War ended, the 15th Amendment was added to the U.S. Constitution. With it, African American men gained the right to vote. On March 31, 1870, a man named Thomas Mundy Peterson became the first black person to cast a vote in a local election in New Jersey. Unfortunately, states still found ways to limit African American men's right to vote through literacy tests, poll taxes, intimidation tactics, and grandfather clauses. Grandfather clauses stated that African American men could only vote if their grandfather had voted. This limited the vote for many men who had enslaved ancestors. The clauses weren't declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court until 1915. Likewise, poll taxes and literacy tests in the South became voting barriers. In Mississippi, for example, voters were required to pay a special tax for 2 years before being allowed to cast a vote. If you couldn't afford to pay the poll tax, you couldn't vote. States also issued literacy tests filled with complicated questions designed to severely limit the African American vote. The 1900s brought a wave of changes. In 1920, a new group of American citizens gained the right to vote: women. The ratification of the 19th Amendment was a great victory for the supporters of women's suffrage. 4 years later, in 1924, the Indian Citizenship Act finally gave American Indians the right to vote. Remember the poll taxes and literacy tests we talked about a few moments ago? In the 1950s and 60s, civil rights groups began making progress towards breaking down those barriers. In 1964, the 24th Amendment was passed, making poll taxes illegal. That same year, the Civil Rights Act was passed. It forbid discrimination based on religion, race, gender, or national origin. In 1965, the Voting Rights Act followed. It forbid anyone from denying the right to vote to citizens based on their race. Another historic event happened in 1965. President Johnson made the decision to send military forces into Vietnam. In the years that followed, support for the Vietnam War waned. Simultaneously, a new fight was emerging on the home front: the fight for the right to vote for young Americans. Armed with a call to action from the 1940s, "Old enough to fight, old enough to vote" became their rallying cry. In 1970, the 26th Amendment was passed, extending the right to vote to all U.S. citizens of age 18 and over. In 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act became a law. It works to protect the right to vote for people with disabilities by requiring polling locations be accessible to all. In the years that have followed, Americans are still debating issues about voting rights. From the voting rights of convicted felons, to lowering the voting age to 16, and even establishing Election Day as a national holiday, people understand the importance of the right to vote and fight every single day to ensure that this right is safely secured in American democracy.
Here are 3 things I took away from that video that I hope you learned as well. Number 1, voting is an opportunity for me to be heard, not only at the national level, but at the state level and within the local community in which I live. Number 2, a lot of people have worked hard so that many can vote. There was a time when Black Americans, American Indians, and women couldn't vote. It is because of the persistence of advocacy groups that you and I can exercise our right to vote today, and we should never forget that. Number 3, the plight for voting rights is not just history, but very much a current pursuit. There are still members of the US population who still do not have the right to vote. I'm inspired to continue educating myself on this topic. Now that we've learned about the history of voting, let's turn our attention to how to register to vote. The folks at WikiHow created this informative and simple video on how to register to vote. Let's take a look.
Registering to vote in most U.S. states is a quick and easy process. To be eligible to vote, you must be a U.S. citizen and at least 18 years old by Election Day. If you are under the age of 18, you may be able to pre-register to vote if allowed by your state's laws. If you are a first-time voter, you will need to provide proof of identity when registering, such as a driver's license, state ID, or passport. You may also need to provide additional proof of residence, such as a current utility bill or bank statement. Check your state election office website for a list of acceptable documents. Note that there may be additional eligibility requirements for your state. For example, some states may not allow those with former felony convictions to vote. You can learn more about your state's requirements by visiting your state election office website. If you meet your state's requirements, you're ready to register. There are 3 ways you can submit your registration: in person, by mail, or online. You can register to vote in person at your local or state election office, or at the DMV if your state has what is known as a motor voter law. You can register by mail using a national mail voter registration form, or via your state's voter registration form. If you don't have access to a computer, you can pick up a registration form at many government offices, such as the post office, your local DMV, or a public library. In several states, you can also register to vote online. Currently, 39 states plus the District of Columbia offer online registration. If you plan on voting in an upcoming election, make sure to register to vote before your state's deadline. You can find your state's voter registration deadline, as well as same-day registration details, on your state election office website or a nonprofit, nonpartisan website like vote.org. The earliest state deadline for the 2020 presidential election is October 3rd, 2020. If you miss the registration deadline, your state may offer same-day registration in person during early voting, as well as at polling centers on Election Day.
Here are 3 things I took away from that video that I hope you learned as well. 1. If you are a U.S. citizen and 18 years old, you are eligible to register to vote. 2. There are 3 ways to submit your registration: in person at your local or state election office, by mail using a national mail voter registration form, or online if you're in one of the 39 states that allow it. Oh, and DC is included as well. 3. States have different voter registration deadlines. To help keep track of all of this information, I found myself visiting the.ismaili/USA/vote. A team of wonderful volunteers has pulled together all the information you'd ever need for voter registration in one central hub. the.ismaili/USA/vote. Go check it out after this segment, or call the National Voter Registration Hotline at 202-854-8683. Now, I'd like for you to think about your reasons for voting. I vote to demonstrate to my students what it means to exercise my right as a citizen, to set an example for them. The students I teach are too young to vote, and some belong to immigrant families who have yet to secure the right to vote. My students are my motivation. I'm joined by some friends who want to share with you why they vote.
Hi, my name is Zane. I'm 22 years old and we're from California.
This year, we're making voting a family affair.
We vote because we want to see our values reflected in all aspects of our life, from the local to state to national level. We're here to remind you to get out and
Vote early!
Ya Ali Madat. My name is Simran Dadwani. I am 17 years old and I live in Illinois. While I can't vote at the 2020 elections this year, I still plan on participating by working as an election judge at my local polling station. As a citizen of the United States, I believe it is my responsibility to get educated on our rights as citizens so that I can share that knowledge with others so they can perform their civic duties as well. By voting, you have the opportunity to make a change and voice yourselves, and everyone should pursue that opportunity. For those of you that are young like me who can't cast a ballot this year, I encourage you to still participate, not only this November, but beyond that as well. Visit the.ismaili/USA/vote to find out ways you can stay engaged.
याली मदद, जैसा कि आप जानते हैं कि यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स में 3 नवंबर को फेडरल स्टेट्स और लोकल इलेक्शन होने वाले हैं। मैं आप सबकी आने वाले इलेक्शन में वोटिंग करने के लिए हौसला अफजाई करना चाहता हूं। आपका वोट निहायत ही कीमती है, क्योंकि इसके ज़रिए आप अपनी कम्युनिटी के लीडर्स को बता सकते हैं कि वो क्या वैल्यूज़ हैं जो आपके नज़दीक बहुत अहम हैं। वोट करने के लिए आपका यूएस सिटीजन होना ज़रूरी है और रजिस्ट्रेशन लाजमी है। आप ऑनलाइन जाकर रजिस्टर होने का तरीका या अपना रजिस्ट्रेशन स्टेटस देख सकते हैं। इसकी डेडलाइन मुकर्रर है, इसलिए हम आपसे गुजारिश करते हैं कि जल्द अज जल्द इसकी तस्दीक करें। आखिर में आपकी हिफाजत हमारे लिए बहुत ज़रूरी है, इसलिए वोट करने के लिए नीचे दर्ज की गई किसी भी एक प्लान पर अमल दरामद करें। बराए डाक वोट करें, ड्राइव थ्रू वोट करें, अपने बैलेट को ड्रॉप बॉक्स में सबमिट करें। शुक्रिया।
Hi, I'm Sabrina Malu from Atlanta, Georgia, and I love what I do. Every single day I get to chat with thousands of millennial minority women who share the same hopes, dreams, and fears that I do. These are smart women. They're strong women. These are women who are vibrant, curious, and witty, and they want to make sure that they have established and stable futures in the country that we live in. They want to make sure that they have equal rights both as minorities and as women, and that's why I'm making a plan to vote this year, and I want to encourage you to make one too. Now, if you live in the state of Georgia, the last day to register to vote is October 5th, and you have to make sure that you're registered. And even if you think you're registered, go back and double check. And once you're registered, there's a lot of different options to vote. You can vote via absentee ballot, you can vote early in person, or you can vote on Election Day on November 3rd. Remember, November 3rd is the last day to vote, but it's not the only day to vote. If you want to get more information, I recommend that you visit the Ismaili.com/USA/vote, or you can call the national hotline at 202-854-VOTE.
Hearing from my Ismaili brothers and sisters reminds me of a quote from Maulana Hazrat Imam during a speech he made at the International New York Times Democracy Forum in Athens. Quote, "Civil society is powered by private energies committed to the public good. It draws on the ancient classical link between democracy and the publicly committed citizen," unquote. Our publicly committed brothers and sisters have shared why they participate in civil society. As American Ismaili Muslims, we have the duty and privilege to be civically engaged members of our communities. In 30 days, we have the opportunity to vote for our representatives and on critical issues to ensure that our voices are heard. For more information on how to register to vote, to check your registration, or to stay updated on upcoming voting-related programming, please visit the.ismaili.com/USA/vote. I'll see you here in a future telecast where Ismailis who are public servants, political office holders, staffers, organizers, and volunteers will join us. It'll be a segment you won't want to miss. Talk soon. Yali Madad.